You've prayed the same prayer for months, maybe years, and nothing has changed. No answer, no peace, not even a sense that anyone is listening on the other end. So a quiet, terrifying question starts to form in the back of your mind. What if my prayers aren't even reaching heaven? Scripture actually addresses this fear directly. There are real, specific reasons prayers can feel like they're hitting a ceiling instead of reaching God. Today we're looking at 3 of them, and the third one is the one most Christians have never been taught, even though it might be the most common reason of all. Before we go further, one thing needs to be said clearly. God is not distant, and He is not keeping score, waiting for you to fail so He can ignore you. 1 Peter 3 verse 12 says, "The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and His ears are open to their prayer." God's default posture toward you is attention, not silence. But the Bible also doesn't pretend that every prayer automatically lands the way we hope. There are conditions, patterns, and postures of the heart that Scripture directly connects to prayers that seem to go unanswered. This isn't about earning God's attention through perfect behavior. It's about understanding what might actually be standing between you and the connection you're longing for. The first sign is unresolved bitterness, especially toward another person. Jesus makes this connection directly in Mark 11 verse 25. "And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also who is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses." Notice the structure of that verse. Prayer and forgiveness aren't presented as 2 separate topics. They're linked together, almost as if unforgiveness creates static on the line. Here's why this matters more than people realize. Bitterness doesn't just affect your relationship with the person who hurt you. It reshapes how you relate to God entirely. If you're holding on to an offense, replaying it, waiting for the other person to suffer the way you did, you are, in a very real sense, standing in the posture of a judge. And it's hard to come to God as a child, asking for mercy, while simultaneously refusing to extend that same mercy to someone else. 1 Peter 3 verse 7 makes a similar connection inside marriage, specifically warning husbands to live considerately with their wives, honoring them, so that your prayers may not be hindered. That word, hindered, is important. It doesn't say prayers become impossible. It says something gets in the way. Something blocks the flow. This doesn't mean you have to pretend you weren't hurt, or rush to reconcile with someone who is still causing harm. Forgiveness isn't the same as trust, and it isn't the same as staying in danger, but it does mean releasing the demand that they pay for what they did before you'll let your own heart move forward. Holding that debt over someone else has a cost, and Scripture says part of that cost shows up in your prayer life. The second sign is a pattern many believers don't even notice in themselves: praying only in crisis. This isn't about the desperate prayers themselves. Scripture is full of people crying out to God in genuine emergency, and God never rebukes urgency. The issue is what happens in between those emergencies. If prayer only shows up when something is falling apart and goes completely silent the moment things stabilize, it reveals something about the actual nature of the relationship. It starts to look less like a relationship and more like a transaction, reached for only when something is needed. 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 17 gives an instruction that's easy to read past too quickly. Pray without ceasing. Not pray hard when it counts. Not pray urgently in emergencies. Pray without ceasing as a continuous posture, not an emergency flare sent up only when the smoke starts rising. Think about how this pattern would look in any other relationship. Imagine a friend who never calls, never checks in, never asks how you're doing, but shows up every time they need something urgently. Eventually, that relationship starts to feel less like friendship and more like being used. That's obviously an imperfect comparison, because God's patience and love for us far exceed any human relationship. But the pattern still says something true about the posture of the person praying. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A short, ordinary prayer on an ordinary Tuesday, when nothing is wrong, when there's no emergency pulling it out of you, often reveals more genuine relationship than a desperate crisis prayer ever could. It says, "I'm not just here because I need something, I'm here because I want to be near you." And now, the one most Christians have never been taught. even though it might be the most common reason of all. Praying without actually believing anyone is listening. This is different from doubt in the normal sense. Most believers experience doubt at some point, and Scripture doesn't condemn honest doubt. This is something quieter and more corrosive. It's going through the motions of prayer, saying the right words, even meaning them emotionally, while operating underneath on a kind of practical atheism, a functional belief that no one is actually receiving what you're saying. James 1 verse 6 to 7 addresses this directly. But let him ask in faith, with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. This is one of the more sobering verses about prayer in the entire Bible, and it's worth sitting with honestly instead of rushing past. Here's what makes this sign so common and so hidden. It doesn't look like unbelief from the outside. It looks like prayer. The words are right. The posture might even be right. Hands folded, head bowed, eyes closed. But underneath, there's a quiet assumption that this is more ritual than communication, more habit than relationship, words sent into a void rather than words received by a person who is actually present and actually listening. Hebrews 11 verse 6 connects the dots on why this matters so much. Without faith, it is impossible to please Him, for whoever would draw near to God must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who seek Him, not just that He exists in some abstract theological sense, but that He exists as someone actively responding to the very words you're speaking right now. The remedy here isn't working up more emotional intensity or trying to feel more certain through sheer effort. It's slowing down enough to actually address God as a person in the room, not a formula, not a habit, not a ritual performed out of obligation. Even a simple, honest prayer like, "God, I'm not sure you're really hearing this, but I want to believe you are," is more aligned with genuine faith than a beautifully worded prayer spoken on autopilot toward what feels like an empty room. None of these three signs are meant to make you afraid of prayer or convince you that your relationship with God is broken beyond repair. If anything, the fact that you're still praying, still reaching out even when it feels uncertain, already says something good about where your heart is. But Scripture takes prayer seriously enough to tell us honestly when something is standing in the way. Bitterness that hasn't been released, a relationship reduced to emergency contact status, words spoken without believing anyone is actually receiving them. Each of these can quietly build a wall between you and the God who Scripture says is actually leaning in, actually listening, actually near. Psalm 34 verse 18 offers the promise underneath all of this. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Near, not distant, not indifferent. Near, even now, even in whatever uncertainty brought you to this video in the first place. So take an honest look today. Is there someone you're still holding a debt against? Has your prayer life become an emergency line instead of an ongoing relationship? And when you pray, are you actually believing someone is on the other end? If this helped you see your own prayer life a little more clearly, consider subscribing and let me know in the comments which of these three hit closest to home for you.